Hello. Welcome to the Inverted Orthodoxy Podcast. My name's Doug. I'm joined here by Kyle. We have been waiting for a week for Blake to teleport into that chair and still nothing. We haven't even gone home. We're wearing the same clothes.
He might have really sunk in his quicksand.
And yet, we took time to shave. Yeah. So, Blake has still not been able to join us, but we are recording these podcasts this week's and last week's back-to-back. As I said at the end of last week, we're just making sure we get a little bit ahead to get us through the Christmas season. And so we have no AER because we answered our AER half hour ago in the podcast you watched last week. And so we are going to jump right into the questions.
We may be piling up a bunch of AER here because we've recorded 4 episodes while one has come out. So this will be interesting.
Correct. Yeah. We may have to do 1 or 2 AER episodes.
Correct.
So, all right. Are you ready, Kyle?
I think so.
All right. Then let's enjoy the twists and turns of this question. I had to work that phrase in at some point because Blake says it every week during the open. Question 601. How have you guys navigated a healthy sex life, and how has Scripture informed you of this? The Bible has lots to say about it, but how do you interpret / bring it into the modern relationship when it comes to intimacy, divorce, what is and isn't permissible?
This is an interesting question, knowing that both of our moms and my mother-in-law watch this podcast, so viewer discretion advised on this episode.
What do you have to say?
Well, the minute you start talking about your sex life and you know your mom and your mother-in-law watch the podcast on a regular basis. I know people who throw this on in the car, so please be advised. This is probably too late about the content of this message. It may not be appropriate for all kids. But I have, in honestly, some simple ways. I think the teaching of Jesus applies to every area of our life. In the sense that your care, your compassion, your self-giving nature, your dying to self and your own desires and putting what I want ahead of anybody else, all these things have to apply to the whole of our life. They apply to our money. They apply to our time. They apply to our desires. They apply to our work life, to our home life. Why would the same things not apply to our sex life? And so the minute that you make another person the object of your own, oftentimes because all of us and all of our desires are manipulated and broken, some other person all of a sudden has the obligation to fulfill all your broken desires, we are in a really wrong world. And I think sex, like the fruit of many other things in our life, is the result of what is more important, not what is most important. And so I think when the self-emptying love in a relationship is given and cared for in a person, and you put the other person first and you work hard to care for them and treat them as the image of Jesus, and they return that favor, sex is a beautiful extra gift that is then the fruit of all those other things coming first. And I think oftentimes in culture, we think it has to be the first thing that will then feed the rest of those. And I think that's just so backwards. And so the way of Jesus applies to every area of our life, including sex.
I have mentioned this book so often recently. I had a meeting with somebody yesterday, and I mentioned this book again.
You're going to have to get copies of this book to give away.
I'm going to start handing it out.
Fill These Hearts?
These Hearts. Yeah. Christopher West.
Mm-hmm. Good old Catholic thinking on sex life.
Now, I will say he's Catholic, and so there are some Catholic phrases and times where he talks about, praying to Mary and different things like that we would say, okay, I don't necessarily do that. But my word, every Christian should read this book.
Yep.
Every Christian who is wrestling with how do I stay faithful in a world that is so filled with sex and that has lifted up sex as the end of life.
Yep.
One of the great ends that we should pursue is a satisfying sex life. And if we don't have that, can we even be satisfied?
Correct.
Can we even have contentment? It is a very powerful, challenging book that is going to cause you to go, oh, wait, as you just talked about, maybe following Jesus is supposed to impact every part of my life. Yeah. I love that book so much. And I think it's just got so much good to say about what is the longing of your heart. And that can speak to sex, which is what that book is about. It can also speak to things. It can speak to workaholism. It can speak to status. It can speak to the pursuit of power, entertainment. It can speak to anything. Yeah. We are people who have hearts that are longing for heaven, and we are constantly looking for those things in everything other than the kingdom, which is the first message of Jesus to his followers. Mm-hmm. Repent, the kingdom of heaven is near. Yeah. And so I feel like this is one of those areas where you speak and people always want to go, yeah, but. Mm-hmm. yeah, but. And I want to say that we, as followers of Jesus, are called into this journey of faith. And the older I get, the more I realize, kind of like marriage. You sign up to get married, you have no idea what you're signing up for. And then as you live a married life, if your heart stays open to the leading of the Spirit and the way that God has called you to, the role that God has called you to play in that marriage, you discover, oh, wait, I now see just how selfish I was on my wedding day when I was committing to marry that person and I was committing to love that person the rest of my life. And maybe other people not. I'll just speak for me. I was so selfish. I'm going to love Laura Lee, but I also want to get a lot of love. Right. And I'm really, really, really pretty sure that she's committing to the same thing. And if I have to focus on one of us giving love and one of us getting love, if I had my way, it would be much more that she's going to give me love and I will be the recipient. Right. That's just the honest truth of the selfish nature. And that's not speaking just about sex. That's speaking about all of life. When I stood at that altar, I loved her. I'm not saying I didn't. Of course. But I was far more selfish than I am today. Not because, and this has nothing to do with Laura Lee. Hear me there. It has to do with the reality of following Jesus and listening to him speak to me about the selfishness in my heart, because I'm a narcissist and I am someone who just is completely obsessed with the satisfaction of myself. And if I will actually dare to try the way of Jesus, which we referenced in the podcast we shot a half hour ago, but it was a week ago, the G.K. Chesterton quote, "The Christian life has never been tried and found wanting. It has been found difficult and left untried," is so true. If we will genuinely follow the way of Jesus and dare to go that way, which will be countercultural, will be counter-self, we will find the life that we want. So I don't say that to... I hope nobody's shamed by what I'm saying. No. But I think that I agree with what you're saying about, a healthy sex life can be this beautiful expression of a healthy everything else. But for me, I can't help but think about, there was a couple that attended our church years ago, a married couple, and she had been in a car accident, and was paralyzed from mid-chest down. There was no sex life anymore. I don't know what it was like before that. There was no sex life anymore. What do you do in that situation, right? What do you do in a setting like that? You can't, and I'm not saying you did, but what the church has done is oftentimes promised, like, you stay faithful to Jesus, then you get married, and it'll be an all-you-can sex buffet. For the rest of your life, it'll be glorious and great. And that just not something we should be setting people up with, nor is it something that we should be pointing people towards. In the church, we should be pointing people towards Jesus and going, hey, listen, I know you think all of these other things are the thing. They're not the thing. Correct. It's Jesus. Because if we will dare to follow Jesus and make that the primary pursuit of our heart, we will find that in him is the satisfaction we long. That's not to say we're not sexual creatures. I'm not saying that at all. But I'm saying Jesus, the one that we claim to follow, was a celibate minister. Correct. Calling people to life and saying, in me is life. We just are so convinced by our world that sex
is the highest of all
everything.
values. Yep.
And it is killing us.
Yep.
It's killing church leadership because we see so many church pastors and leaders who fall, and that kills the church because then churches have to feel the weight of that failure, and it kills the people in the pews because they haven't learned that. I'll tell you, one of the greatest things that was ever said to me was as a young man, long before I ever got married, even before Lorelei and I were ever anything.
Right.
A pastor said to me, I was sitting, and I don't even know how we got in the conversation, me and one friend, two young single guys. And this pastor just looked at us and said, if you think that marriage is going to solve your lust problem, you're going to get married and be disappointed.
Yep.
Deal with your lust problem.
Totally.
And it was one of those punch in the face moments.
Yep.
Like, oh, what are you talking about? Because I'd grown up in a church when it was like, just wait till you're married. And then, it's going to be go time.
Yep.
And he's like, no, how about you just deal with your lust?
Yep. And there's so little of that kind of talk in the church even. And that's what really disappoints me to have to admit of we in the church are happy to talk about dealing with the brokenness of every one of our other desires. And we go, you have to change your hunger for wealth. You have to change your hunger for power. You have to change your hunger for all these things because they are broken. They've been manipulated by the world and by the enemy. And so we call them all into question. I have personally struggled with my literal hunger for food and allowing that to become, Paul at one point says, their stomach is their God.
Yes.
And when I first read that passage, I'm like, oh man.
I remember reading that passage and just being so convicted.
Totally. And so I have allowed my actual appetite hunger to be something I have served to my own detriment and therefore in opposition to the way of Jesus. And I would be completely off my rocker to go tell everybody, whatever appetite you have, just feed that with your actual stomach. None of us would think that our appetites and what we crave is right when it comes to our food. And then all of a sudden we go, like you said in the church, if you could just hold it together till you're 19 or 20 years old, because oftentimes that's what we've reported, get married young.
Yep.
If you can hold it together for 19 years, then your appetite will be entirely justified and righteous. What absolute baloney.
Yes.
And so we have to call into question every one of our desires, and we don't talk about that within the sex relationship as expressed within marriage and say, well, it's because behind that closed door, it must be right. And we don't call people to a realization of even within marriage, our desires are misshapen and they are broken. And so this way of Jesus, like we started with, has to apply to every area of our life. And I think I could even be as specific as say it has to be about your attitude towards sex as much as within the act of it. Like it has to be even within the practice of sex itself, still about the other person and still about self-emptying and not about my own gratification, but what I can give to somebody else. And so in every area down to the finest point of our life, it is Jesus and it is caring for others and it's putting others first, because I think when we join in that practice across all of creation, from the smallest to the most universal principle, that becomes a humanity that looks like the kingdom of Jesus in every area of our life, with what we do with our money, to all the other things we said, our jobs, our resources, and our sex life. And this is what Jesus calls us to question our desires and to live a life that is self-emptying. And so there's lots of stuff that's helped inform my mindset. Yes, scripture's there, the teaching of Jesus, period. But there's also, I believe, people who are speaking by the Spirit to help us understand. I cannot recommend enough after Fill These Hearts as a larger principle, specific to today's Western post-purity culture Christian world. The Great Sex Rescue and She Deserves Better are incredible books that speak to the issue and help undo some of the poor teaching on sex in our culture. Just so helpful on everything that they've offered. They've got a bunch of other resources. The Good Guys book to sex, or to good sex, and the Good Girls book to good sex, or something along those lines. Sheila Ray Gregory. They have one on marriage. They just have any resource they do, read it. It's so worth your time in that. I think there's a beautiful call, though, in Scripture, in those resources, in lots of others, of, I'm not saying you can't have a hope that sex will be a part of a marriage. I think it can be and should be. but it cannot be an expectation. There's a difference between expectation and expectancy. We've talked about lots of times of like, there is always going to be, okay, I want to offer this to the other person, but I also can't expect, because you're supposed to offer it to me, here's when it's going to happen and on what schedule and when I expect it, because all of a sudden turns back into this selfish thing. And yeah, I could go on about this one because there's so much bad teaching and bad mentality about there that I could want to ram against, but I'll stop there.
I will say, I'll disagree with the one thing you said a while back where you said, we in the church, we call people to all of these other areas and say, you got to deal with that, you got to deal with that, you got to do that. I don't know that we always do that in the church.
Fair.
I think that
we're more comfortable talking about those hungers.
But I do think that in the church we have said, come follow Jesus and find the blessed life, let people define the blessed life however they perceive it.
Correct.
Right? Come follow Jesus. You'll have the lovely spouse. You'll have the kids. You'll have the nice house with the job that you want and a nice car and all of these things. That is not the message of Jesus. The message of Jesus is come and die and find heaven. Yeah. It is near. Yeah. Again, it's such a radically different message than what we often give. What about the couple that get married and buy into that? And the sex life is great, but they can't conceive. Yep. And for years, they struggle with infertility or never get past infertility and are never able to have those kids. Yep. Sure, maybe the sex life is great, and that's the one area where they've been like, everything's wonderful. They've got exactly the same sex drives, and they're having sex. They're both very happy. Yep. And yet the church has said, and you'll get your 2.4 kids or whatever the average is, and they've never had it, and there's this brokenness in their heart that we have presented something as God's absolute promise that is not what we should do. Yeah. And we have set people up sometimes for crises of faith, for extra challenges during the difficult seasons of our life by promising things that we are not qualified to promise. Yeah. As people who call people to the Jesus way of life. Yeah. And so I don't want to sound like I'm preaching, and I don't want to sound like I'm beating people up, but I a number of weeks ago, as we were in our Corinthian series, there was one Sunday where I just talked about, I ended up not preaching the sermon, that was the one that was online. And I just talked for the whole sermon about the call that Jesus made is the call that Jesus still makes, which is come and die. If you'll do that, you'll find resurrection. Going back to what you said about expectation versus expectancy, we always want, okay, I will come and I will offer Isaac because I know that then you give me Isaac back. Okay, God, I will come and offer my sex drive because then you're going to give me the sexual fulfillment that I really want. I will come and I will offer you my money because then you're going to give me more money. I will come and offer you X because you're always going to give me X back, plus now it's a blessed X. And so that is oftentimes what's presented. That is not the message of Jesus. It is not surrender the thing, and whatever you surrender, I will give you back times 3. Right? I surrender my Honda HR-V to Jesus, and so now it's going to turn into an Acura. Right? That's not the way it works. No. But we have at times presented that, and it's horrible to do that. And the message of Jesus is, come and die. There is resurrection if you will do that. And that resurrection is not a better version of the thing that you already want. It's the joy and the peace and the righteousness you're seeking in that thing found in the thing that can actually give it to you.
Totally.
And so oftentimes, instead of actually coming and surrendering those things, what we do is we come looking for just a blessing on them. And that is a radically different thing than coming and surrendering those things. And so I think this applies to a healthy sex life. If you want any hope of having a healthy sex life, a blessed sex life, surrender has to be a part of that.
Yep.
And then what that actually means is I trust Jesus enough that if whatever in the context of my setting,
Yeah.
the sex life, you're not going to give that back and it's going to be the blessed sex life. You have something for me that's better.
Yep.
You have the peace, the joy, the righteousness,
Yeah.
the fulfillment that I'm seeking in sex,
Yeah.
in something deeper that'll offer me that.
Yeah.
And that is really the message of Fill These Hearts.
Yep. Yeah. There's so much more we go into. It's difficult too to speak at a level of specificity because I think there's going to be a unique conversation we have to have, and we'll give the throw out one more time of we're also pastors. Like, come please talk to us if your marriage is in a difficult spot and you're asking this question out of a point of desperation.
Yep.
Because I think there's a lot of times, well, even as I addressed, the conversation around sex is often a fruit of conversations that need to be had before it, of where there's disbalance or dissatisfaction in the sex life also often means it comes with a whole bunch of other things that need to be talked about in your unique world. There's a lot here. We can't go on too much longer.
I wish that we all would find the faith to surrender our lives to Christ and leave them surrendered.
Yep.
And I don't mean that just in a sex way, and I'm not trying to make the person who asked this question feel like they're not, because I don't know, and I don't know what drove this question. I'm speaking to all of us.
Totally.
But I think that the radical call of Jesus on our lives is to trust that what he has for us is better than whatever we think we want.
Yep.
Like when you're a parent and your kids, there's been times like I'll throw Leah under the bus. I just want to go to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to McDonald's.
Yeah.
I just want to go to McDonald's. Well, we're not going to McDonald's.
Yeah.
Right? And all she wants is McDonald's.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to Disneyland instead.
Yeah.
And that's a hyperbolic exaggeration. But there's a reality there that I genuinely believe that Jesus has for us. Mm-hmm. Trust me.
Yeah.
What I have is what you really want.
Yeah.
It's all the ends that you want.
Yeah.
You're just looking for them in different means.
Yeah.
The means you're looking for them in are not going to really satisfy.
Correct.
They're not going to ultimately satisfy. Yeah. So you have to let go of those.
Yeah.
And embrace my means.
Yeah.
And if you will embrace my means, you will find those ends.
Yeah. As you pursue that life, I think, with a partner in commitment in marriage, and you can also live that out first towards your partner and in the safety and security and the effort of trying to love them as Jesus would love them. I think there's welcome to have those conversations of, I'm still human. These are some parts of me that I have desires and I'm struggling with, and welcome this person who has committed themselves to you to hear that you're struggling, not with expectations or demands, but in a sense of, I'm doing my best to love you, but I also need to let you know where I'm at in some of my struggles and those pieces, but then leave it with that person to also then find that Jesus type life towards you. There's a whole lot of conversation we can even have around that. But for now, that's kind of just all I can really encourage is making space and effort towards the way of Jesus within even your marriage that allows the vulnerability of expression of where you're at with those things to be able to start a conversation and see where that leads.
Yeah, the other thing that I would say is I don't know that there's any area of life that we feel more shame in when we mess up.
Correct.
So I want to just speak to whoever would be listening to this, who maybe is resonating with what we're saying, and along with that resonance comes this sense of shame and condemnation.
Yeah.
Listen, this is a process we are called to live into with Christ. However many times you need to surrender the life that you have, the struggles that you have, that's how many times you have to surrender it. Do not give shame any foothold in this area of life. This is, for whatever reason, this sin is one that is accompanied by so much shame.
Yeah.
And shame when we fail, but also if somebody's marriage isn't what they think it should be or what the world has told them it should be. Shame in that end.
Yeah.
May we find the reality of the fact that there should be no place for shame in our lives, no place for condemnation in our lives. That is going to hurt you far more than it's ever going to help you. So what we're talking about here in these calls and in these words is the result of years and decades of stumbling forward in this path.
Yep.
So give yourself grace as you endeavor to redirect those things to Christ. No matter how many times you fall, just keep getting back up and going.
Yep. There's a whole end of this question we didn't even address. So we'll have to either get some AER or decide if we want to address
is what?
It. Divorce, what is and isn't permissible at the end of that one.
Okay. Well, maybe we need to pick this one back up.
Yeah, maybe. We'll, we should probably do that to honor the whole of the question. We think we spoke to what was most important off the bat, but I think it's fair to get into some of those specifics. So with that, though, we have to probably end our time, knowing these are short episodes. So we thank you for tuning in. You can, maybe that's a hook for staying and tuned in next week. But if you wanted to give us some AER on what has already been said, you can go to our website, invertedorthodoxy.com. And while you're there, you can find other episodes, search through them, and then, go back to wherever you found this episode, listen to it, watched it, give us a rate, review, comment. It helps the message get out there and other people to find this. So we thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.